More than half of adults in this country enjoy alcohol. The beer market alone was worth about $100 billion last year. Americans drank over 6 billion gallons, but few understand the effects of alcohol on their brains and their bodies, or do they? Adam Rogers' new book is called Proof, The Science of Booze. Adam, good morning.
Good morning.
So you make a point very early on in your book to say everything you think you know about hangovers that you learned in college is false.
It's a bummer.
Why did you take it upon yourself to figure this out? Because you went all in, Adam.
Personal interest?
Yes.
Because anything that we do that affects the body so seriously that we do with such frequency, right? That becomes interesting. It becomes an interesting scientific challenge. I wouldn't characterize my own experience with hangovers as anything that rises to the level of an experiment. It's a pure anecdote.
But you had a historical perspective, too, about booze.
Well, sure. What I got interested in was the idea that the human relationship with alcohol, with making and drinking this stuff, is really kind of a model, a miniature for our relationship with the natural world and with technology. Basically, everywhere you look in the history of science, at the points of innovation, if you really kind of want to search for it, the alcohol is there. Yeah. They were looking at alcohol, and that got us to the next beat in science or technology.
Many Americans have an intimate relationship with booze and know a boozicus McClure or two. So what did we learn in this book? What have you taught us?
Well, what I was trying to get at was that if you were making this stuff, that even though we think about that as art, as an artisanal, as a craft, right? That what you're actually doing is engaging with a highly scientific process, that you're engaging with an invisible microbe that's 150 million years old, that undergoes a kind of nanotechnological process that might be part of chemical warfare among germs that we've harnessed, that we've domesticated. That if you're drinking a distilled spirit, that you're engaging with a fundamental moment in the history of technology where we built something and invented something that nobody else has ever done.
Most of us understand that a hangover comes from being dehydrated. That's not true?
So drink lots of water, I always heard.
You're certainly dehydrated when you're hungover, but you can get rehydrated, right? You can wake up and have a glass of water and you're still hungover, right? Yeah. Your electrolyte levels, the things that sort of a sports drink will say will restore, those are normal when you're hungover, so it's probably not dehydration.
But the most important thing that you learned is what?
The most important thing about hangovers or about booze generally?
About booze generally.
I think the most important thing I learned is that when you are taking a drink, that it is a much more serious endeavor than just something recreational, that it connects us to our own history as human beings.
But what does it do to
our brain?
Oh, the brain. See, the brain's fine. Well, the fascinating thing about ethanol, particularly, is that unlike any other recreational drug, right, which is what it is, scientists haven't really articulated a mechanism for how it works. So something like marijuana, let's say, people sort of understand what that does in the brain. Ethanol is not true, and ethanol is the one that people often have the most experience with, especially because it's legal, right? So there's some good science. We understand that it, for example, seems to turn off the things that make us feel not too good all the time, right? So it gets us out of our own way. We start to feel better. There may be specific receptors in the brain that haven't been totally identified yet, right? That respond to ethanol and respond to other things as well. So
to avoid a hangover, Adam, do what? Other than don't
Why
drink.
do you care?
I know. I really.
But she knows what our viewers care about.
Well,
she knows what our viewers care about.
Like the old movie War Games.
Which of these drunks do who don't want to get a hangover?
Unfortunately, the only way to win is not to play, right? There is some sense that hangovers are an inflammatory response, like if you have the flu, right? And so some of the things that seem to work, and there aren't that many, and there hasn't been much science on this, are anti-inflammatories, right? Now, the over-the-counter anti-inflammatories that you can get right now have their own side effects, so you don't want to be gobbling that stuff by the fistful. You get other problems in your guts and your liver. But the inflammatory response seems to be the target that they'll try to get.
All right. Adam Rogers, thank you so much.
Thanks, appreciate it.
An excerpt of Proof, The Science of Booze, appears in the June issue of Wired magazine.